Today we want to look at the prepping side of the silver market. But before we do that, I wanted to bring you a very quick market update. My name is Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Financial Channel. It's Wednesday, February the 18th, about noon Central Standard Time. So we still have about 4 hours before the futures market closes. And so I wanted to talk just a little bit about what silver has been doing today, and maybe for the last couple of weeks, just very briefly before we get into our prepping discussion as far as one of the uses of silver. But again, today is the 18th. We opened up at $73.41. We've been as low as $72.22. and as high as $78.44. And right now we're right around $78, or a little over $4 up for the day. If you have been watching it all, you know we've been trading in a range for nearly 2 weeks now. The range was pretty much established 2 weeks ago tomorrow. So on the 5th of February, a Thursday, we had been trading up near $90 that evening on the overseas market, and then it sold off, and it sold off significantly, dropped all the way down to $70.86, which has since that time pretty much provided a support level for this market, and the $90.51 is certainly resistance right now, and we haven't challenged that, but we have challenged the support a time or two. One time, the day right after this low was set, we went down, but the Shanghai regulators noticed that there was one trader who was breaking the rule, operating with a number of accounts to accumulate a massive short position. When they found out that he was breaking the rules, or the entity, whoever it was breaking the rules, they shut them down, and when they did, the market went up fairly nicely. I think it closed on that day at $77.69, and we haven't really come off of that mark much at all. As a matter of fact, that's about where we're at right now. And so that support line did hold pretty good. Since that time, we've gone up and down, but we've just kind of continued within this range. We have been close to the bottom part of this range, and if it penetrates this and stays below it for a day or two, then we might have something to talk about as far as the next leg down in the market. Just like if it breaks out over the $90 mark, we might have something to talk about as far as the next stage of the bull market. But right now, we have really kind of consolidated a little bit, and that's a nice thing to have happened, especially after that gigantic drop we took on January the 30th, when the market actually had a $45 trading range and dropped $30 for the day. But anyway, that's where we're at right now in the market. Let me bring you up to date just a little bit on where we are on the March contract. A lot of us have been watching the March contract because we've had so much demand of late in the silver market, and the supplies are dwindling to the point where there's been some concern whether or not the Comex exchange can even deliver the promised contracts that may still be outstanding as March gets here. But we've noticed a pretty good decline in the open interest on the March contract. It started just a couple weeks ago at about 85,000 contracts, which was 425 million ounces of silver. As of yesterday, we were down to about 57,000 open contracts, which is about 285 million ounces of silver. So it's dropped 140 million ounces of silver just in 2 weeks as far as the contracts that were outstanding that could take delivery. However, that 285 million that's still present is a pretty big presence. You will expect to see that drop in the next few weeks. As a matter of fact, they've got all the way through the end of March for those contracts to zero out. So time is still available for them to be able to settle those contracts. It should be noted that there's less than 100 million ounces of silver available for delivery, though, right now, and if the demand surprises the Comex with what they actually do take delivery of, well, we could have something of a situation there. So something to keep your eye on it. I don't look for anything really wild to happen. And I've mentioned this before, the Comex, as many problems as it has had, if anything happens to the Comex exchange, well, that would make a significant difference on the dealers and the wholesalers that we like to deal with. I'm not saying it would ruin the market, but it would surely put a crimp in it. And so don't be hoping for something to happen to the Comex, and I really don't expect it to. But that's where we stand on the Comex right now. Yesterday we dropped about 1,500 contracts, or over the last 2 days, because Monday was a shortened trading day, and that's not a lot of silver. That was just 7.5 million ounces. So we've still got quite a bit of claims coming up on silver that is just flat out not there right now. We expect to see those claims go down, but we're in a historic time and odd things have been happening. So it is something to keep your eye on, even if it may not be likely that we actually have a failure to deliver on this March contract. Now, wanted to slow down a little bit and just talk about the prepping use of silver as far as those who are looking at the situations around them. There's a lot of reasons that people prep. Some people prep just for their own personal circumstances. Maybe you've got a seasonal job where there's certain times where you're just doing all the business you possibly can, and you're actually making extra money that you don't have to use at that time. But you also know that there will come a season where your business slows way down. And so you're kind of a seasonal prepper at that, because you try and stock up as much as you can during the good times for the slow times that you know will typically come. There's also just in our regular lives, there's uncertainties. We have health concerns. Maybe somebody gets laid off from a job unexpectedly. There's all sorts of things that could happen and do happen in our lives. And so it makes sense to a lot of us just to be a little bit prepared for things like that. The name prepper through the years has had various connotations, sometimes a negative connotation where people are making fun of those who prepare, but there's been a lot less making fun of those in the prepper community in recent years, especially after the flu made some big differences in our national and worldwide economy, and there were some certain things that were unsettled, and those who were prepared didn't look quite as foolish or alarmist as maybe they had been viewed in the past. So that's what we prepare for from a personal standpoint. We could have different situations in our own lives where it's prudent to have a little bit stocked up. And then, of course, on a national and a worldwide basis, you have to admit that our nation is fouled up right now if you live in the United States, but so too is the world. The financial structure is becoming weakened. In America, we're rapidly approaching $39 trillion of debt that's on the books, and that doesn't speak to any of the unfunded liabilities, things like Social Security and military retirement and Medicare, and just all these different programs that the government is on the hook for that they should have funded because they had taken the taxes in to pay for those programs that are not funded. And that is multiples of the 39 trillion that's outstanding right now. And so just in America alone, you can see that there are certain financial uncertainties that at some point are going to have to be resolved. There's a famous quote that says something along the lines of, if something is unsustainable, it will eventually come to an end. Well, our national debt is unsustainable. It will come to an end at some point. At what point that is, I don't think anybody really knows. I suspect it's surprised a lot of us as far as how it's gone so far. And this is not just true of the United States. It's a worldwide phenomenon right now. Those who have relied on fiat currencies, money that's money because it's declared to be money by the various sovereignties, they've taken advantage of that, and they've printed up way more than is prudent. And because of that, we've got a lot of problems right now, and the world is just absolutely engulfed in debt. And so you can see some problems on the horizon. You can look at the unsettled nature of the world right now with different conflicts going on and threats of conflicts going on. And so prepping is not a bad idea. Those who were prepared going into World War II were an awful lot better off than those who did not prepare in that situation. And remember, World War II followed very closely on the heels and could be considered part of the Great Depression. And so it was a very difficult time in American history. The point is that there are bad things that can happen from the outside. Nations can experience some harsh times, and it looks like we're stumbling towards that. Robert Bork one time wrote a book that was called Slouching Towards Gomorrah, and he made some points along these lines, but his main point was it's our morality that has become in such disrepair that it's affecting everything, including our finances. And as you look back over history, especially if you see powerful nations and empires that have fallen apart, usually they rot from the inside, and they rot first from a moral standpoint. And you look at America and some of the other Western nations right now, and you have to admit that our morality is not all that sterling right now. And I believe that our financial difficulties, our huge debts, are just a symptom of that immorality that we have gotten ourselves into. And just think about that. What is more immoral than spending money you don't have and then charging it to your children and your grandchildren, forcing them to pay off something that you didn't have the money to pay for today? Well, that's what our nation has done, and large segments of the world have done. There will be a reckoning someday, and so it makes sense to prepare. Silver's part of that preparation, I think, should not be overlooked. I do want to just point out there are certain things that are very prudent to do. It's prudent to have a strategic pantry, to have several months worth of food stocked up, to where if something difficult happens in your personal life or on a macro basis, a worldwide basis, you're prepared. You don't have to spend a lot of money for that. You can buy a lot of meals on beans and rice for not a whole lot of money. And so if you're not stocked up at all on these types of items, that's a good place to start. Is that what you prefer to eat every day? No. But those beans and rice are going to taste awfully good when you at least have something to fill your belly with. And so start with that. You can get more variety in your diet, and you need to. My wife and I are very blessed in the fact that we've enjoyed very good health. We're not on any kind of prescription medication, but we do take certain supplements that we feel like add to our overall good health. And so we've stocked up on some of those supplements to where we've got a supply of those in case something happens to disrupt the supply. And just a few years ago, some of those supplement supplies were disrupted for a little bit. We were glad we had some on hand. And then there are just other areas. There's paper goods around your house that you're going to be using, foil and plastic bags and oil filters for your automobiles, maybe windshield wipers. But you can stock up. You can get a strategic stockpile, not to the point where you're trying to have something laid in store for the next 5 or 10 years, but just enough to where you have a prudent supply of things on hand should things ever get out of control. We're very fortunate. We have on our property an old windmill. Now it doesn't work, but we're in the process of getting a pretty good well man to come in and reestablish that well, and he's just going to put a little solar pump on that, and so we'll also have a water supply should we need that, but we'll have free water to water our lawn and garden until that point. And so that's something that you probably need to be thinking about, is what will you do for water should that become a difficulty, or just the idea of having an extra water supply on hand that's relatively maintenance free and is relatively dollar cost free at that. And so those are some of the things that you can be looking at. But as far as silver goes, silver has a 5,000 year history as money. It's been exchanged for just about as long as we have written history, and so it's recognizable. It's something that's been used for a long time. Until the year 1965, America used silver as its coinage. The only constitutional money in America are gold and silver coins. Our Congress through the years have done away with that part of it, but haven't done away with the Constitution. It was made constitutional because it was something that worked, and our founding fathers saw that it did. And so it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of silver on hand for that reason. I would have a certain amount of 90% silver on hand, pre-65 U.S. coins, half dollars, quarters, and dimes that are 90% silver. Those are very recognizable, and they can be used in trade and barter. A lot of farmers markets are already using them for just that. It's not that difficult to do, and it is something that will be recognizable should we ever have difficulty in that area. And then there are things like silver eagles, 999 fine silver, that are readily exchangeable, maybe not for as much money as you would like or as close to the spot price as you would like, but you can sell those just about at any time. They are liquid, and so it doesn't hurt to have a supply of the 90% constitutional silver and the 999 fine silver, such as the U.S. Eagles, Canadian maple leaves, or just generic rounds that are readily recognizable. These things will help you during bad times. And you don't have to have a big worldwide event to have bad times. When my wife and I changed careers and I became a preacher, I went from a very high-paying job to a very low-paying job. But we had a little bit of silver and gold on hand, and we were able to sell that to help make ends meet until our salary was able to rise to a point where we could afford to raise a family of 5. And so that was something that was not a big worldwide event, but it was important to our little world. And so prepping in silver and gold for us, even though we didn't really look at it as prepping, it was just more of a savings, turned out to be something that was very useful. And since that time, we've had a number of occasions where we've had some emergency here, or we had an opportunity there where it was nice to be able to have a little bit of precious metals on hand to where we could sell that and take advantage of the opportunity or handle whatever crisis we were going through. Most people just use borrowed funds in situations like that until they get in deeper and deeper and deeper over their head until they're drowning in debt and have very little hope of getting out of it. If you can be prudent now, if you can prepare not just for your food stores and some of your other physical needs for the future, and if you can just save a little bit in that, it doesn't take an awful lot, but if you can save a little bit in silver to go along with your food supplies and other provisions that you have made for the future, well, I think you'll be pretty happy about that. It's worked out, again, very nicely for my wife and I. It's worked out to the point where we were able to actually retire a little bit early because of the increase in price that silver experienced through the years. And so we've been very blessed. Don't get me wrong. We were able to retire because of God's blessings, but part of those blessings were our supply of a little bit of silver that we had put aside through the years that allowed us to be able to do that. Prepping, I believe, is going to become more and more important in the future, and prepping is always something that is done before the event happens. You may feel very comfortable with the way things are going right now and see no need for prepping, but that's kind of the point of prepping. You prepare when you have a little bit extra when times are good so that you can take care of the times when they're bad. I realize the Bible is very critical of those who would tear down their barns and build bigger ones just to store up things so they can take life easy. I'm not suggesting you prepare so you can take life easy, but I am suggesting that preparation is prudent, and there are things that we can do if times do go bad where we can actually help others out who are not as fortunate and as blessed as we were. That's the reason you prepare, not so you can take life easy and do nothing, but so that you can enhance your stewardship as far as God's possessions are concerned. Well, that's the video for today. I hope this gives you some ideas. We just kind of touched on some very basic topics, but you're very much like me probably in the fact that sometimes that's all you need is a good idea to run with. So here are some ideas to think about for you to either accept or reject, to enhance or change in any way you want to. But that's the video. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I always appreciate the comment section. Has been just outstanding. Some really good advice is contained in there. And I would encourage you, if you have a few extra minutes, just to go and read what some pretty smart people have put within those comments. But again, thank you for that. Thank you for watching today. I truly appreciate all of you who have taken the time to subscribe, and I hope we'll see you again next time. God bless.